Epic History presents The Beaker Genome, tracing the genetic revolution that built modern Europe. But to understand this story, we must travel back to a time before nations, before written history, when the world was young and Europe was only beginning to take shape. 5,000 years ago, Europe's first farmers watched the sun rise over quiet valleys. They had tamed the land, but could not foresee the change about to come. Across the continent, generations sowed wheat and hope in the same soil. But in the distance, travelers appeared, carrying a culture unlike any before. Strange pots began to appear, tall and flared like the shape of a bell. No one knew then. These cups marked the arrival of a new world. From Iberia to the Rhine, their craftsmanship spread like a whisper of change. But behind the art moved people, carrying new genes and new ways of life. At first, archaeologists thought it was only fashion, pots and styles shared among neighbors. But DNA would later tell a story far more astonishing. When scientists studied the bones beneath those cups, they uncovered migration in the genes. It was not trade or imitation. It was replacement. Within 3 centuries, 90% of Britain's population was replaced. No great war, no fire, only quiet transformation. The newcomers carried steppe ancestry from the Yamnaya herders far to the east. They brought metal, horses, and possibly the linguistic roots that would later become Celtic. Yet the shift was not destruction, but blending, a merging of old and new blood. The last farmers lived on, their genes still whispering beneath modern skin. The Bell Beaker story was written not in words, but in the code of life itself, a story of change, migration, and the invisible threads that still bind us to the past. The Beaker people arrived in waves, crossing seas and rivers that once divided Europe. With every settlement, they brought copper, horses, and their bell-shaped cups. Soon, their pottery appeared from Spain to Poland, a pattern too vast to be coincidence. It was a language of clay, shared by strangers who somehow felt the same rhythm of life. Archaeologists once called it the Beaker package, pots, tools, and burials all changing at once. But this was more than style. It was identity, carried in blood. Under the soil of Britain, something extraordinary was happening. Within a few generations, the genetic makeup of an island was transformed. The Y chromosome lineages of the first farmers almost disappeared, replaced by the R1b lineage, carried by men from the steppes of Eurasia. Yet life in the villages went on, fields tilled, fires lit, children born. Change had arrived quietly, almost unseen, yet irreversible. Some historians imagine it was not conquest, but contact, the allure of new power and prestige. Others wonder if plague or climate opened the door to newcomers. In graves, the newcomers lay with daggers, wrist guards, and those distinctive beakers, symbols of a new social order now rooted in the Western lands. Steppe ancestry now flowed deep through the rivers of Western Europe. The continent itself was reshaped, not by empire, but by inheritance. Still, not all was lost. Traces of the first farmers remained, hidden in genes and stones. Their legacy whispered in monuments, in memory, and in us. The Bell Beaker villages hummed with quiet rhythm, life shaped by craft and ceremony. Each object, each gesture, carried meaning older than memory. Their homes were simple, but alive with the warmth of families and firelight. Laughter mingled with the crackle of embers, the oldest sound of belonging. Music and ritual filled the turning of seasons. Under the stars, they offered songs to the forces that governed harvest and storm. Their copper tools gleamed like small suns in the morning light. They were not weapons alone, but symbols of skill and pride. Trade carried their creations far beyond their villages. Through rivers and sea routes, their beakers became messengers of a shared culture. Even their graves spoke softly of who they were. Each dagger, each cup, placed with reverence for a life well lived. Women likely played central roles as artisans and caretakers. Their memory endures in the patterns they left behind. Fires marked festivals, moments when work and worship became one. In those flames, they saw the cycle of birth, death, and renewal. They valued community above conquest, harmony above haste. Their world moved slowly, yet it endured for centuries. The Bell Beakers left no written words, but their art spoke for them. Every curve and pattern whispers of beauty found in everyday life. To the Bell Beaker people, the world was alive. Every stone, every tree held a spirit. Their rituals honored the unseen, a quiet dialogue with earth and sky. They buried their dead facing the rising sun, believing life returned with the dawn. The sun was not only warmth, it was the promise of renewal. Fires were their bridges to the divine, light speaking to light. In the flicker of embers, they saw ancestors watching back. Water, too, was sacred. Rivers were the veins of the earth. They cast gifts into flowing water, trusting their prayers would travel far. The moon governed their calendars and their mysteries. Under her pale light, the tribe marked the seasons of sowing and harvest. Some rituals left traces in stone, circles, alignments, and sacred markers. They aligned earth with heavens, believing harmony kept chaos away. Their shamans read omens in flight, flame, and the whisper of wind. Knowledge and faith intertwined. Science and spirit were one. They feared forgetting, so they wove stories into memory, not into words. Every child carried history in their heart, passed through spoken song. Even in death, they believed one could walk home again. For them, the world beyond was not punishment, it was return. In every ritual, the Beaker people sought balance. Not victory, but harmony. Their faith bound them to one another and to the world that held them. As centuries passed, the Beaker world began to blur into others. Trade grew, languages changed, and new alliances took shape. Metal spread faster than myths. Copper gave way to bronze. With it came prosperity, but also new hierarchies of power. The old rituals faded as new customs took their place, yet the memory of the Beaker remained, a vessel bridging generations. Climate began to shift, rivers withdrew, and harvests grew uncertain. Communities adapted, moving, merging, surviving as they always had. Some say their decline was quiet. No war, no disaster, just time. Others see a transformation, the Beaker spirit living on in new forms. Historians and archaeologists still debate what truly ended their era. Perhaps it never ended. It only changed its name. In Northern Europe, Beaker traditions merged with early Bronze Age tribes. Their art, their metals, their genes, threads in the same tapestry. Archaeology shows not disappearance, but diffusion. Beaker influence rippled outward, long after their name was forgotten. Even as their culture dissolved, their innovations endured. Every spark of metal carried memory from that distant age. And so, the Beaker world ended not in tragedy, but in transformation. Their legacy waiting, silent, until science could give them voice again. Centuries later, their story lay buried, until science found a way to listen. Ancient DNA opened the silence of 5,000 years. From tiny fragments of bone came the voices of the past. Each sequence a whisper, each cell a page of forgotten history. When the first genomes were read, the results startled even the experts. They confirmed what pottery had only hinted. An entire people once replaced another. Yet, it wasn't a story of conquest, but of continuity through change. The genetic record showed not endings, but new beginnings woven in code. Male lineages shifted, the old I2 faded, and R1b rose in its place. A handful of ancient fathers shaped much of Europe's future sons. But the women's ancestry told a gentler tale of blending, not erasure. Their genes carried forward, binding the old world to the new. Steppe ancestry became the thread running through the fabric of Europe. Even today, traces of those migrations rest within modern bloodlines. Science proved that culture and genetics danced together, sometimes in harmony, sometimes apart. It showed that identity was never fixed, only evolving. New techniques revealed even deeper secrets locked in ancient bones. We now read history not from scrolls, but from the code within ourselves. The Bell Beaker mystery, once buried, now connects the living to the long dead. Through science, their story came full circle, from silence to understanding. The Beaker legacy was not just in clay and copper, it lived on in us. Every cell carries the echo of those who walked before us. In modern Europeans, traces of Beaker ancestry still run deep. Their genetic signatures stretch from the Atlantic coast to the heart of Asia. In Britain, almost 9 out of 10 modern men carry Y lineages born in that age, proof that even when cultures fade, ancestry endures. Scientists keep uncovering new details hidden in ancient code. Each breakthrough draws another thread between their time and ours. The Beaker's journey reminds us that identity is never still. It flows across generations, borders, and the quiet patience of time. Their art, their rituals, their genes, all part of the same grand mosaic. The pieces scattered through time still fit together in us. The line from them to us is not broken, only braided. We are not their end, we are their continuation. In museums, their cups rest quietly, but in our bodies, their story beats on. Every heartbeat is a drum echoing across millennia. Perhaps this is the real secret of the Beaker people. Transformation without disappearance. They became part of everyone, everywhere, forever. Their story ends where ours begins, in the shared memory of being human. For the Bell Beaker people never truly vanished, they became us.